you some insight into people's different behaviors and how they react to social TV products. We got some good feedback on the chat through the Watch It 2 platform. We appreciate people kind of chiming in. One of the things we just saw is that some folks had a problem with the volume on that video. When the video is playing, if you'll just roll your mouse over the lower right-hand corner of the video player, you'll see there's a volume control within the video player that allow you to turn that volume up a little bit, and that might help you hear that video better. So appreciate that feedback. Keep it coming and keep the conversation going. Now we're going to hear from User Insights CEO Eric Holtzclaw. Eric's going to talk a little bit about the behaviors that you just witnessed and why people behave the way they do within the social TV industry. Eric?
Good morning. I'm really excited this morning because I actually get to talk about our research. So often when we do things, we're under NDA or we can't even tell anybody what we did. We do over 150 projects a year here at User Insight over a wide variety of industries and spaces, and we picked this space because we felt like it would have a good interest to everyone. So what I'm going to ask you this morning is, why do you do the things that you do? I mean, why do you watch certain television shows? Why do you join certain conversations on Facebook, follow certain people on Twitter, or even decide to follow or respond to certain tweets? Or do you think that social media is sort of all bunk and you're not really a TV guy? Well, we're going to explore that a little bit this morning, and what I want to do to kind of get into that is share some information that I have. So we're going to bring up the slides now. And so what we've seen this year is that most shows have been including hashtags in their show, which is a really interesting and new trend. It's more this year than we've ever seen before. This is something that's is prominent in there as you see like a channel logo or even maybe a product placement in Survivor. And what this chart shows you is the number of social media mentions this year over 2010. The dark dot in the center represents 2010, with the lighter area being 2011. In 2010, most notably, is the growth for the show 2.5 Men. 2.5 Men grew 12,000% in the number of social media mentions from 2010 to 2011. Some people attribute that to the Ashton Kutcher effect, because he has a lot of followers on Twitter. But it could also be that when Charlie Sheen joined Twitter, he had over 1 million followers in just 2 days. If you happen to be a fan of Glee, Glee has an interesting approach in which their actors actually talk to people while you're watching the show live. So it makes Glee a must-watch event for any Gleek. On this chart, I'm going to talk through a couple of statistics. One that's interesting is that 86% of mobile users are using the internet while watching television. And if you think that social networking growth has slowed down, you can just look at the age category of 55 to 64 to know that there was 88% growth from 2009 to 2010. What's interesting is that social networking and blogging sites have become the #1 internet destination, outstripping every other destination online. And if you're a self-promoter, the best time to be retweeted is actually at 4 p.m. on Friday afternoon. So what you can see from all of this information that we've talked about this morning is we've learned a lot about what's going on in social media, what's going on in television. And what we also know is that social TV is here to stay, and the TV really isn't what it used to be. What we at User Insight wanted to understand was something beyond the what people were doing, and look at why they were doing it. The world is an ever-changing place, and companies are introducing new technology all the time. Think back to our friend Gilligan. When he was on the island many years ago, he would have been carrying a transistor radio. If you move forward 40 years, he probably would be carrying an iPod. We at User Insight are passionate about understanding why people use the products that they use and the services that they choose to take advantage of. We want to know why someone's an iPhone user and why someone else may actually like and love the Droid. And when the companies understand this about their users and understand what their users want, they get to the core of who the user is. And by getting to the core of those users, they can prevent failures like some of the ones that we've seen in the media recently. All of us know about the recent announcement by Netflix to split their services into two categories. They created a new product called Quickster that was going to handle their DVD by mail service. And almost immediately after making that announcement, they had many, many people unsubscribe from the service or drop back to the type of service that they were using. Recently, they've abandoned that plan. I wonder what a little bit of user feedback would have done in that situation. What you need to know about people is that they're different. And people are not different in the traditional old economy way, where age, sex, income, where you lived, and who you married mattered. It doesn't matter what your demographics are. What matters now is what the drivers are behind your motivations and your behaviors. Who are you at your core, and what do you care about? Let's take coffee, for example. You may think that coffee is just a commodity and not really that big a deal. But for me, coffee is an experience. And that's what makes me a die-hard Starbucks guy. I love the stores. I love the smell. I love the fact they remember my name and my drink when I come in. That there are big comfy couches to sit on in between meetings where I can use Wi-Fi for free and have a place to hang out. For other people, they're perfectly content going through the drive-thru at Dunkin' Donuts or even McDonald's. And there are even those people who actually brew their coffee at home. As you can tell, coffee is a mindset and an experience. And we wanted to understand what the mindset was at the convergence of social media and television. So we did what we do best. We talked to people. We spent hours in people's homes watching them watch television. And we paid special attention to when they use social media. And our definition of social media was very, very broad. We looked at when someone might send a text message to one of their friends, talk to family or friends who might be in the room, if they tweeted something or potentially joined a conversation or responded to something on Facebook. We also brought users into our lab, and we took some emerging social TV applications to understand which features and functions might appeal to the different groups. We did some analysis, and then we came up with this. Kidding, we didn't come up with this. This may look like one of the earlier drawings of what we did, but we actually came up with this. And so what I'm going to do is spend the next few minutes talking you through the different personas that we found when we started looking at the convergence of social media. And when we decided to understand more than what people were doing in this space and look at why they were doing it. So let me introduce you to our first social TV friend. This is Showless Joe. Now, Showless Joe is really not a TV guy. In fact, he thinks it's a pretty mindless activity. And if he is watching television, he's probably watching a show like History, TLC, or maybe even the news. If it comes to a commercial, he's going to flip to another station and not pay attention to any of the commercials. But he is watching his TV live. Most often, you probably find Showless Joe asleep in front of the television because he's used it as white noise to help him fall asleep. His enthusiasm for social media matches that of television. He really doesn't get the appeal. He thinks it's sort of self-serving and self-promotion, and he thinks it could also be a potential privacy risk. Now, you might think that Showless Joe is not a social TV persona, but we're going to come back to him in a few minutes. So let me ask you, are you Showless Joe? Now let me introduce you to my next persona friend, Keeping Up Carl. Keeping Up Carl really uses the TV and social media to stay connected to those that he cares about and those that he loves. He wants to watch television shows like American Idol or Modern Family so that he's up on the latest gossip and in on the latest jokes. He watches his TV live and keeps up with his friends and family on Facebook and what they're doing and what's going on in their lives. He will often comment on something that somebody puts on Facebook, but he rarely will post anything about himself. He really wants to use these mediums as a way to stay connected to those that he sees in person all the time. So are you a Keeping Up Carl? Or is someone in your family a Keeping Up Carl? Our next persona is present-day Pat. Now, what you need to know about Pat is that he is busy. He has things going on, hobbies, places to be, things to do. But he does have a few TV shows that he really likes. And so he uses his DVR to record them and watch them when he has the time. In fact, Pat loves his DVR because it lets him have it all. He uses social media, but typically on the go. He likes to tweet or put a posting to Facebook when he's out and about with his friends. And he enjoys the fact that he has access to text message to those that are closest to him. He loves the fact that a lot of his shows are now available for streaming via his laptop, his tablet, or even his mobile phone. Are you a present-day Pat? And would you be lost without your mobile phone? Comfortably ensconced in her favorite couch is our next persona, Passionate Penny. Penny loves television. It's a pastime for her. And she pays attention to TV as much as possible. She has dedicated TV time every day. She uses her DVR to maximize her TV watching so that she can catch up on her favorite shows and see as many as possible. She will fast forward through the filler fluff so that she can get to the meat of the show. She's the queen of her remote control, knows all the shortcuts, and really enjoys watching TV as sort of a pastime. She uses Twitter to follow her favorite celebrities and see what's going on with them, and she loves it when Facebook gives her the inside scoop. Do you love season premieres as much as Passionate Penny? Last but not least is Chatty Cathy. Now, to Cathy, Facebook and Twitter are a cocktail party. And Cathy loves to party. She uses TV as a conversation starter, but when the buzz around a certain TV show dies down, she's going to move on to the next trending topic. She likes to see herself as an authority or go-to person in social media, and it really gives her the platform that she's looking for to have those conversations and meet those people. In her social media networks, she is the most important person. She loves it when shows like the Grammys or Oscars are on because it gives her something live to talk to her friends about. Are you a Chatty Cathy? Now I'm going to throw in a slight wrinkle. While we were doing our rounds of research recently, we realized that we found an in-context persona. An in-context persona is a persona that only exists for a short period of time. So, let me ask you, could you care less about television like Showless Joe, or maybe you're a Keeping Up Carl, or maybe you're like Present-Day Pat? But it's football season, and you just can't get enough. When we were testing fantasy football applications this past quarter, we realized that there was an in-context persona when an event like football was on. That some of our less than passionate personas, Keeping Up Carl or Showless Joe, for example, were watching TV as passionately as Penny and using social media as much as Chatty Cathy. And so when we got underneath that to understand what it was, we realized that football changed people. And so let me introduce you to Singular Sam. Singular Sam is interested in football and likes to watch as much as possible, especially when his team is playing. He likes to use social media to talk with his football tribe, and he's typically talking smack. They have their own kind of internal language that they use. But just as soon as the football season is over, just like the Wolfman changes back after a new moon, Singular Sam goes back to his core persona. So now let me ask you, which persona do you think you are? Now I'm going to see if there's some questions from the Twitter feed to answer about the different personas.
We do have a few questions. One question Twitter feed. Actually, this is from the Watch It 2 room, Eric. Question says, it looks like the graph of personas are a nice, convenient line. Are there people that exist outside that line, upper left or lower right?
Well, I love that people say that there's a nice, convenient line. One of the hardest parts of doing this type of research is that we end up with hours and hours of video, and we're trying to figure out how we are going to come up with what they look like and how they relate to each other. And the consultant answer is that you would put them into a Venn diagram. And so we always actually start with that because, you want everything to fit in a nice Venn diagram or some kind of an XY. And fortunately, in this situation, it is an XY. So we were able to map people on their enthusiasm for television and against what their enthusiasm was for social media. So if you look at the horizontal, you have your enthusiasm for television, and if you look at your vertical, you have your enthusiasm for social media. So because this project is really just looking at the middle space where social media and TV converge, we really concentrated on the upper right quadrant and the lower left quadrant. People in the lower right care more about television than they do social media, which is sort of why you see Singular Sam sitting there, because he does watch television, but he's really not a social media guy. And people in the upper left quadrant care more about technology, so they're probably not watching TV. They have other things that they're going to be doing. So that's why you don't have anybody living there. That's important that they said that it was sort of this, convenient line. It doesn't always work out this way. Sometimes we have triangles and Venn diagrams and circles. It's really just a way to explain how these people relate to each other and understand often what's going to move somebody from one direction to the next.
Okay, great. This is from the Watch It 2 platform as well. It's guest RC6TUG. And RC6TUG says that they're new to personas. How do you use these?
Okay, so personas are great because, as I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, people like to concentrate on demographics. So you'll often hear, especially in the television space, because television has been a medium that's been around for a long time, that you're going to buy advertising or you're going to build products based on demographics. So they'll want to know how many males or females are watching a show, or what's the income level, those types of things. And what we found, especially as sort of the internet continues to break off into these apps, internets who used to build big, huge websites that were supposed to service everyone, there are these core motivations behind why people do what they do, and it doesn't have anything to do with their demographics. You really have to understand what the behaviors are behind those motivations. And once you understand that about a person, it's just as easy as really doing demographics. You can ask the same kind of small set of questions, and then you can build products that are going to more likely appeal to them. So it gets you beyond thinking of people by these slices that I think we've traditionally looked at.
All right, well then I've got a dinger for you here. This is from guest out of the Watch It 2 platform, MPOWGZ. They're asking you what percent of the population, for example, is chatty Cathy? How do we determine some type of distribution, I guess, is what they're trying to get to there, Eric. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so that's a really good question, and that's actually what happens at the end of almost all of the persona projects we do for customers. One of the reasons we do persona projects is that they've been doing the same thing over and over and getting the same result, and it's not necessarily always been so successful. And so we'll go and look at sort of the attitudes and behaviors of why people do what they do, and then they want us to find out if there's some kind of distribution for those personas. You can find personas and you can find their distribution within geographic regions, but you ask different types of questions. So you would send out a survey, and instead of asking somebody if they were male or female, you would ask them, did you watch all of the season premieres and did you DVR them? That would be a behavior of Passionate Penny. Where Showless Joe would be like, I didn't watch any of the season premieres, I don't even know what's on. So doing a quantifiable study around that distribution is something that can be done. We did a little bit of quant, sort of between the second and third quarter, to look at what shows people were watching and see if we could drive anything. But to understand that distribution, you have to do the quant survey and then understand that some of your personas may not actually participate in the survey. So you may have to follow some other methods for understanding quant. I guess I sound like I'm dodging the question a little bit.
Sure,
we are. We are a qualitative company. We do use some quant methods, and we can talk with people about how they approach it from a quant perspective, because we understand the behaviors of those people to get to that. These personas do exist. They just do. You can talk to somebody for 3 or 4 minutes and you know what persona they are. It's my favorite cocktail trick. So I would get somebody and I can peg them based on some of the research that we've done. But it's a matter of knowing where you distribute those surveys and understanding the traditional methods and modes are not going to be the way that it works. And I would also argue that why do you care? So if you have a persona and they're an effective persona, they actually impact lots of people for their products and services, you would want to reach that person, and you would build content that was appropriate to that person. It's much better to have done that and build something and say it's for everyone.
Well, I said that's another follow-up question here is, do you build different product features or functionality for all the personas or only certain personas?
You would build, the answer to that question is yes and no. So I'm going to give you an example using Foursquare. A lot of people are familiar with Foursquare, and in our research we found that Foursquare appeals to different people for different reasons. So you can build one application like Foursquare, which actually works for multiple personas. Some people like the fact that they can become mayor of a location. Some people want to get deals and discounts. Some people want to find out if their friends are there or make new friends. So if you build Foursquare and you put out a marketing message around it, you want to understand who the core persona is that's going to use that product, because they're really going to be the driver for your early success. But then you start to promote the other features that exist within the product, and that allows you to get more reach. So if there are people who want discounts, even though they don't care about becoming mayor of a location, they're still going to check in so that they can get that discount.
Interesting. So we had a follow-up question. I think it's just coming back to the demographic thing, but they're looking at the persona graph and they're saying, but it looks like most of them are male.
Yeah.
Does that related maybe to behavior?
Yes and no. So if you look at the shorts that we did, we actually purposefully picked some females to represent the people that we represented as males on the chart, because we wanted to make sure people understood we weren't indicating that one person was one gender or another. We probably could say that Showless Joe is more commonly male, and that's only because when we did the research and we pattern out the gender, we can look at that, and if we do see that and it's like greater than 60 to 70%, we will use the picture of that gender to actually show that persona. But that is not necessarily indicative. What we use, it really isn't male or female.
Okay. So we got another one here. Can you explain the differences between Passionate Penny and Chatty Cathy? They seem to be very similar.
I would argue that they're not. So that's what's interesting with personas, is that it's in the nuance and it's in the execution. So you have to be careful that you're really looking at it the right way. So Chatty Cathy, if you took a pie chart and you said you made it 100% in social media and television, Chatty Cathy is 75% social media and 25% television. It's all about the conversation, and the TV is the reason that she's having that conversation. If you look at Passionate Penny, she's 75% TV and 25% social media, and her social media use is based on supporting what she's doing on TV. And I think that's one of the biggest things and the problems with looking at what. Now, we know back in the .com days that a lot of people looked at statistics around who was visiting your site, where they were dropping off, and they tried to use those statistics to fix the site and understand, what the problems were. But we have the same thing. You may have a group of people who are talking very actively about a show, but they could really care less about the show. They're there because everyone else is. So the content you're building in the show isn't necessarily as important because they're going to drop off at the end. And you may have a show that is important to a group of people and they're going to follow it. I can think of things like Fringe and even Lost when it first started. And they're going to stay with it for the long term and do things with that show that you wouldn't expect. So you need to understand why you're getting the buzz. It's not about buzz.
So this is interesting. I like this question. The quote is, "I'm a singular Sam, but only by marriage." That is me. I'm actually a singular Sam, only by marriage. How many of these how many people default to a persona based because of their spouse or their kids?
Yeah, so that's considered a life change, and so often we will look at life changes and that may impact your core persona. But what you have to think about is, would I be doing this if it weren't for the other person in my life? We have a set of travel personas, and you see a huge influence of the married couple, one person being married to one other type of traveler, and they'll pick one type of trip one time and another type of trip the next. So it becomes this nice little balance between the two. But there is influences, and life stages do cause that. But at the end of the day, if you weren't with that person, would you be watching that television show, or would you be doing something else? And the answer would probably be you would be doing something else. You're doing that to be in commune with them. And that's me. I am singular Sam by marriage.
And you are a regularly.
I'm a chatty Cathy. So it is all about what people were talking about and what the new trending topic is.
Okay, well, chatty Cathy, I have a question specifically for you. This is from Twitter. Is chatty Cathy only about shows, premieres, and the like? Could chatty Cathy be about sports? It seems they're different than Showless Joe in that respect.
Yeah, so what we found with Chatty Cathy is that Chatty Cathy likes to participate in the conversation at large. So she wants to participate in things that are happening that are kind of live events so that she can, can you believe they wore that going down the red carpet, or it's the Super Bowl ads, sort of things that have a wider reach. When you look at football, there's this really interesting subculture within football. And so they use social media, or Singular Sam does, because they have this sort of tribe of football people. They have their own internal language and the way that they sort of talk smack with each other. And they don't necessarily want to broadcast that information to everyone. So they will do these things like on private channels. They might use text message, or they might send somebody a Facebook message privately, but not necessarily post it on their wall. And then what happens if you talk smack this week kind of externally, and then next week your team doesn't win? So you can really actually separate your chatty Cathys from your singular Sams when you're watching football events based on the type of things they're talking about and what they're willing to say.
So are you saying, I just got this comment in there, are you saying that you have to understand your personas to build out a product in general, or a social TV product specifically?
I'm not saying that you have to, but I'm saying that you should. I mean, it's such a, like we do this stuff where we look at people and demographics and we try to peg them down into male, female, income, those types of things, even life stage. And we have just proven that model over and over and over again. We have companies that bring us these large segmentation studies, and they look at who's using it, and they tell us what they're using, and then we can just prove that and say that is really not what's driving that person to make this decision. And I think that the interesting thing about television, if you look at bookstores, video stores, music stores that no longer exist, they suffered some of that they needed to understand really what people were doing. Just because they're still the same demographics, but those kinds of modes and mediums don't exist any longer because people have chosen a different way to interact and get that content.
So we've got a few questions around the graphic. I think there's just a bit of confusion around how do they use this graphic. We're tweeting this graphic, by the way, out to everybody who's participating, but they're kind of looking at it, and I think probably what the problem is that a lot of people haven't seen this sort of thing before.
Right. Yeah.
Can we just take a little bit and kind of explain how someone might look at and use that graphic?
Well, the important thing about the graphics are less important, to be perfectly honest. It's a nice, neat way of us representing all the personas together. And sometimes you do have life stage changes that will cause someone to move from one part of the graph to the other. In this case, it's rare. Singular Sam is really our only example, and that's in context. So he's going to be in a place for a while, and then he's going to move back. You don't typically go from Showless Joe to becoming Chatty Cathy, though you could have some kind of introduction of technology or some other thing that makes you want to watch more television, or you get introduced to social media, and all of a sudden you realize it's a cool way to talk to people. So you might enter into this in a different way. One thing I would say is that the more important thing is to really understand the personas themselves, the nuance of the personas, and know which personas to go after and which ones you should really maybe not pay as much attention to. And you have to think about the features and functions of the products that you're building and look at the matrix. So I don't know, right now we're looking at this slide, but can one of you go back to like one of the previous slides? I think we're putting this information out. So if you look at this information, this is actually more helpful as it relates to the personas. It shows where they relate to each other, but it actually gives you like a little narrative. So we tell a story about what's important to Singular Sam and kind of his primary quotes. And we also talk about the features and functions that he cares about. So would he check in? Does he want to know and talk with other people or meet new people online? It's all those considerations. So getting into kind of this deeper content about who Singular Sam is allows you to understand what you should build for him and how it should look and how it should work. Concentrating on the continuum, it's sort of a consulting thing to do. You take people and you say, this is where they plot and this is how they live with each other. But we'll often find times where the continuums don't work at all, and we have to have separate continuums for different groups.
Interesting. So I got a comment. It's an interesting comment. So they're basically saying, so ignore Showless Joe when it comes to social TV products. Yes?
Understand Showless Joe and how he might be using what you would consider a social TV product. What I would say is that Joe thinks that TV is mindless. And so if he had a different kind of TV listing that gave him some things that were similar to his other interests, if you know, like the only way the DVRs know nowadays what shows you watch and can make a recommendation is by you DVRing it and doing thumbs up and thumbs down. So if Showless Joe has an hour, he may want to fill that with something that's in line with his favorite topic. Let's say that he's, interested in engineering and there's going to be a show on next. Maybe he gets some kind of a customized TV list that lets him know what that is. You're also going to see some products today that integrate things that might be interesting to Showless Joe. He might care about finances or weather or sports scores or some other type of information. How do you integrate that into the page in a way that it's important to him? So you just need to approach it from his perspective and not from the perspective of trying to change his behavior. Because what you find is that personas gravitate towards the things that they want to use and care about. You can't force them to use something.
So I got a tweet that says, my mom's not technical. How could she possibly be one of these personas?
Your mom may not be one of these personas. So it depends on, she may fall in the lower right quadrant. So if she likes to watch television and she doesn't use technology, then she's in that lower right quadrant, which has the enthusiasm for TV, but is really less about technology. When we looked at the original graph, we thought that technology might be an overlay, but when we reworked it, we realized that the continuum really was social media and TV. So there could be people using DVRs and things like that in the lower right quadrant, but they really don't fall in the intersection of social media and television.
Okay. Hey, we got just a couple more minutes for questions here. I've got a few more. So I love this persona stuff. Can these personas be used for any company or product? Could we use these today for the stuff we are building?
Well, it depends on who we are and what we are building.
And I don't know that.
So what I would tell you is that they're foundational in the social TV space, and like when we've done the travel personas, those are foundational. So foundational means it is who these people are at their core. Then you would take this information and then you basically start to insert stimulus and see how they react to that stimulus. So for example, you would take the social TV products and let's say Get Glue. You would take Get Glue and test it against the different groups and see how they react to the features and functions and see if there's something that works or doesn't work. So unless they are in the social media television space, then they would want to look at the personas differently. Because I would argue there's a set of social media personas, a set of television personas, like every major context has its own foundation. And often, just as a follow-up, when we've done work like in support and other areas, we find the same foundational users, but then their use of different products may be different. So one group may be attracted to one carrier, like one cell phone carrier for one reason, and another group may be attracted to another. That's why you have people who use iPhones versus Droids. There's probably the same support personas, but the way that they work within those confines are different. So the context is important.
Great comment from somebody or question from somebody from the Watchitoo platform. So are Chatty Cathy and Passionate Penny more likely to be earlier adopters of social TV apps? And so should we concentrate on them initially? And then maybe, I think what they're getting at here is build out other feature functionality for late adopters.
If your space is social TV, then one of those two personas is a good first adopter. And then they may introduce things to other people. I'm a Chatty Cathy, and I'm married to a Passionate Penny. And so I will find things often, and then I will show them those products to her, and then she starts using them. And she may actually use them more than I do, because I'm using them for the novelty and the fact that it's giving me access to new people, that type of thing. whereas she's using it because it actually gives her more information about the show, and it's something that she might use moving forward.
So can you tell us just a little bit about the difference in the personas with someone who watches live versus someone who uses DVRs, and kind of that lean forward, lean back concept of time shifting and being engaged? There seems to be some confusion there.
Well, what I would say is that DVR usage is really about whose time you think is more important. So if you are trying to schedule your time in a way that either you're not going to let TV sort of dictate what you do, you use your DVR to time shift to times when you really want to watch TV. So we talked with a lot of people who would record Modern Family and watch it on Saturday morning because that's when they have the time to do it. Or if you're like Passionate Penny and you have time every day that you want to watch television, you try to watch as much television during that period of time. So live TV is sort of a technology adoption. It also may be that live is something that they do with their family, so they sit around and they watch American Idol together, or they're participating live. That's definitely what you see with Chatty Cathy. It has more to do with like seeing DVR and those types of things as a convenience, or just thinking that you watch things live because you don't really want to go to the effort. Like Shows Joe doesn't know when he's going to watch TV, so he's going to watch live because he's just going to pick up something that's going on at that time. So I think you would lean forward, lean back. I mean, some of the lean forward stuff is really around some of the streaming we're seeing. So the ability to, download and stream these movies and shows wherever you are and whenever you are, and maybe that's how you pass the time somewhere. But I don't know that there's anything else beyond that.
Okay. All right. Singular Sam. Again, I'm not sure the difference between him and Showless Joe. Can you just? I think they're thinking, does he go up the line or to the right of the line? Where does he belong on the graphic?
Well, we actually talked about that a lot internally. So we knew Singular Sam existed, and we almost wanted to put him on top of Keeping Up Carl, because we sort of felt like he was very similar to Keeping Up Carl. The Keeping Up Carl is going to continue to use social media more actively than Singular Sam will after the football season's over. And remember, our definition of social media is very broad. So we're not looking at Twitter or Facebook. We don't really want to talk about the platform. We want to talk about the ability to communicate with others that you care about. Keeping Up Carl is communicating with those people all the time. He's using Facebook to see what they did that day. He's watching shows because they're watching them. He's sort of letting them influence him. Where Singular Sam is watching football or soccer or some other sport. And he has this sort of tribe. It's people that he went to school with, people he's friends with that he knows roots for the other team, and he wants to be able to talk privately with them and sort of smack talk because he may not see them live. So we put him over more in the TV area, but close to where the social media usage is. But we really feel like he falls sort of outside traditional social media use. He would love to have like a private chat channel on a fantasy football application that lets him talk to just his group. And like I said, on Facebook, he's not going to post something on the wall of someone. He's going to probably send them a private message via Facebook.
Okay, so I got an interesting question here. I'm kind of jumping all over the board. I apologize for that. This particular person said that they've tried to use personas before, were not successful, seemed that they didn't get buy-in from other areas of the organization. Any recommendation on how to get other people to believe in this sort of approach?
Well, you say the word believe, and this word is my religion, so you really believe, right? And I believe it because I've seen it work so effectively. What typically happens is just like the execution of these large demographic studies, they're just not put in play as well as they should be. So there are ways of socializing these activities, taking the personas and thinking like them, which is much easier, honestly, to think like a persona than it is to be a male and try to think like a female, or the demographic things that happen often. And go through what your features and functions of your product and understand from the lens of that persona, would or would they not do this, and what are sort of the limitations. I've been in lots of socialization exercises with customers in which we've killed a product before it even got developed, or we changed the product in a way that it was going to definitely be more successful. And that's a much simpler, easy thing to do than it is to go off, develop something, put it out there, and then not understand why you're either having success or failure. So it's really about getting into kind of a qualitative thought with this and socializing them, thinking about which ones you're going after, how they're going to use it, thinking like that persona.
So I'm going to go a few more minutes here because we're getting a lot of good questions here from the Watch It 2 platform. Doesn't the type of show influence when and how people are social?
Well, that can be true. So if you have a live event, something that's going on like the Grammys or the Emmys, nobody necessarily wants to watch. I guess your Passion and Penny might DVR that and watch it. And like the Super Bowl, what I loved about the Super Bowl this year, being a Chatty Cathy and not really caring about the Super Bowl, is it was the best cocktail party. Like, we watched the show, and I don't even know who played. I can't even tell you. But we were at a party with other people watching it, and then I was chatting with all of my friends on Twitter about the Super Bowl ads. So it's sort of that alone together concept. So certain shows really do support that more than others. Things like Lost and Fringe and things that sort of have this cult following, one thing that's nice is that people may not watch that live, but there's some products, and we're going to see those today, where you can see people tweeting other information they may have found, and there's this sort of cult culture behind it, and people really want to know the inside scoop and what's going on, or they sort of just watched it like I did because I could never figure that out. And there are different shows that do influence that, and that's why this in context occurred. We realized, even when we were doing the initial round, people were saying, yeah, well, there's nothing on. Like, shows like there's nothing on. But then they would say, but I do like to watch football. And we're like, okay, we're going to come back and look at that and see how it's really impacting these people.
So somewhat of a follow-up question, I guess. Does a football game have greater social interaction than, say, Dancing with the Stars?
I don't think that that's a thing to look at. So Dancing with the Stars has just a different audience of people who may be talking about it in a different way. So you can have people who are just as passionate about Dancing with the Stars, but I don't think they would necessarily be a Singular Sam for Dancing with the Stars. We could do a study and see. We could actually take that and look at that as an influence. We really wanted to find a couple of things that were very focused, because that's typically how customers bring us stuff. And so fantasy football is what we picked, and it's sort of the overall problem message that we gave ourselves at the beginning of the year. We pretended like someone was bringing us something that wouldn't be a sports application at the end of the day. So I think that what you have to be careful about with these things is that you understand the motivations and behaviors behind why people are interacting. So is it because Dancing with the Stars is a hot topic and people want to know what happened and that type of thing and want to be able to talk about it and sort of promote themselves via Dancing with the Stars, or is it because they really, really care about the show?
So this is an interesting question, and because later in the day we're going to be talking to Bluefin about some of the things they're doing and looking at numbers and reach and different types of behaviors, right?
Yes.
We're also going to be talking about different types of content and what really influence means in this space. So does the number of people that are engaging by persona matter, or is it the passion behind these people that maybe makes the difference?
I think it depends on what you're doing. So if you're an advertiser and all you really care about is like top of mind, so you want to be in the stream, so if somebody's going to see you and that's going to help you give you that top of mind kind of commodity driven thing, then you want to know that, hey, the hot show this year is going to be 2.5 Men, and I want to make sure that I'm advertising within that space. If you want long-term customer relationship, you need to understand why they're doing that experience. So I would think somebody building a social TV app might want to make sure that they have a longer-term relationship with the people who are using it than just something for a short-term burst.
So that's interesting. We're going to cover that, I think, in panel 3 today, and we'll see if panel 3 agrees with you or doesn't agree with you.
And I would say that right now that's kind of an interesting space, because TV is such a it's such a known entity. It's been around for so long, and they've sold advertising kind of the Mad Men way forever in this space. And so how this is going to work, we knew the internet was new, we knew it was a new medium, people bought banner ads and did all that kind of stuff back in the day, and I think they understand now it's more targeted, and it'll be interesting to see how this is taken on.
Okay, just one more question here. Does Chatty Cathy and Passionate Penny have different tribes for the different shows they watch?
I would say that Chatty Cathy probably has a tribe, and Passionate Penny may not have a tribe at all. Passionate Penny doesn't necessarily care that anybody else talks to her about her shows. I mean, she may have a few people on Facebook that she knows watch the same kind of maybe shows on the down low, they've got these favorite kind of shows that are their vice. But Passionate Penny's not about her tribe. Passionate Penny, like Chatty Cathy wouldn't really be following a lot of celebrities. She wants to follow people that she can get to know and talk to on a personal level. Passionate Penny's Twitter list is really going to primarily be people that are celebrities. For example, I told you that my wife is a Passionate Penny, and she used to watch, I can't remember her name, there's a talk show, and her mom was always on the talk show, and she follows the mom but it's all about like the celebrity. It's not about other people necessarily.
Interesting. So this is my question to you.
Okay.
Do these personas care about some of these products on the market that are offering up the check-in kind of features, the badge kind of features? Are they looking for other types of value? Is it a little bit of both?
I would like to say it's a little bit of both, but I would like to say that it's probably heavier on the non-check-in side. So the check-in needs to have something as part of it. I don't know that there's enough there to really incent someone for the check-in, at least long-term. If you look at the Foursquare model, I think they realized that checking in, and they may have originally thought they need to get discounts and those types of things. There's going to have to be like backstage pass information or some kind of exclusive insider, something more beyond a badge or a mayorship type situation based on the research that we did. We looked at this quite a bit because it was one of the things we tested. So I think there's going to have to be something that's sort of more compelling.
All right, so I'm sorry. This is a really good question. That's the last question, I promise you. Would be interesting to know what the different personas do during each of three phases: deciding, watching, and reviewing.
Deciding to watch a show, watching a show, and reviewing. Wow, well, that's going to be different for each one of them. So I don't know. It's going to be hard to cover for all 5 personas, I think.
Could you give maybe an example of just one?
Yeah, so I could give you an example of deciding for passionate pinning. It's a new show. I've never seen it before. Actually, I think I'll do it that way. So I'll do one for each one, right? So for passion pinning, she's going to decide to watch a show because she's never seen it before. She loves season premieres, and she'll go through the list and actually pick out every show and DVR it, and she's at least going to give it a chance. And sometimes she's surprised when a show goes off the air, because she may have it on her DVR, and then it disappears because it didn't get the eyeballs that the media was expecting, but she really actually liked the show. If you go on to our friend Chatty Cathy, social media might drive her to what she watches. So she's watching her stream, she's looking at what's trending, and all of a sudden something starts to trend. She may not even know it's on. I mean, this has happened to me. I've seen the Grammys or trending, and I'm like, oh, the Grammys are on tonight? People are talking about it. Let me turn it on. So that'll drive them to what they watch. And then once that dies down or they don't really get any response in that stream, then they move on to something else. And then if you look at, the last was reviewing. I think reviewing is a really interesting thing for Singular Sam because we're finding that they want to go back and understand how the games were played that day, what are the stats, how am I aligning against other people. So they kind of like that historical information. Reviewing is also a really cool thing for Passionate Penny because she wants to, while she's watching a show, she'd be like, oh, who is that actor? She wants to go look them up and find out what other things they've been in, who they're married to, how many times they've been married, any of that kind of thing. So there's a lot of application. You would think about that for all of the personas, but I think that gives you a taste of how it might be different.
Yeah, that was a great question. So, okay, I think we need to wrap up the Q&A here.
Okay. Thank you very much. There are a lot of good questions. So sort of as a wrap-up, I mean, and all these questions really helped with what I was going to kind of say here at the end, but why is all of this important? It really doesn't matter what my age, sex, income, any of those types of things, my demographics or your demographics, that make you your certain persona. And it's not those things that make me a Chatty Cathy. And in order to give the best value to people, companies really need to understand who we are at our core and what makes us do the things that we do. What are the motivations and the behaviors? And get beyond our demographics of trying to slot us that way. And what's really cool about today is I think that's what this social TV event is all about. So up next is our first product, Video Short, and it features Snappy TV and Watch-A-Tube.